Today's episode is in support of the Student Entrepreneur Academy, where tomorrow is today.
Welcome back to the Business Leaders of America podcast, where business leaders come to share their advice and journeys to success with existing and emerging leaders of America. Join us as we delve into the minds of these accomplished individuals, uncovering the strategies and insights that have propelled them to the top. Whether you're an established leader or an emerging force in the business world, this podcast is your go-to source for the knowledge and inspiration needed to navigate the dynamic landscape of American business. Now, here's your host, Dylan Bloyd.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Business Leaders of America podcast. Today, I'm joined by Dave Behar, a true innovator and brand builder whose work has helped shape some of the most influential companies in media, technology, sports, health, and consumer goods. As the founder and CEO of Ion Network and Behar Brands, Dave has built game-changing platforms and brands that have reached millions, all while staying committed to the power of personal branding, collaboration, and digital transformation. Today, we'll dive into what it takes to develop an authentic personal brand, the role of storytelling plays in building long-term brand success, and how AI is reshaping the way businesses engage with their customers. We'll also explore the future of localized content and what entrepreneurs can do to truly stand out in a competitive market. So get ready for an insightful conversation with a thought leader who has spent his career driving innovation and shaping the future of branding. Welcome to the show, Dave.
Gosh, that's quite an introduction, Dylan. But you did mispronounce the word insight. It's Ion Sight.
Ion Sight. Yes.
Well, it's good to be with you, Dylan. It's super cool.
Yeah,
Very
I've
awesome.
been excited about this one. So, I know I gave a little bit of an intro, but I'd love for you to give a brief, extended intro on yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Oh gosh. Well, that's going to take several dozen years.
Perfect.
So as long as everyone's got their drink by their side and a pillow and
Yeah, exactly. We'll have to do this in a couple
well,
episodes.
well, I mean, first of all, it's like where am I today? I'm literally midstream in what's being accomplished in my life, and I've got a little bit. I'm past halftime, which means over 50, but I've got another half game left. So I got two more quarters easily.
Yeah.
Plan on staying healthy and completely fluid with what's going on in the world of business, let alone entire personal life and well-being. But kind of the steps to get to kind of where I am. I mean, it's not as plain and simple as I wish it was, but it's always been following kind of a methodology and also filling voids that were existing in the marketplace that I'm pretty excited about having accomplished, and always going after some of those opportunities that are presented, or I create the presentation to make it happen. So steps by steps, a couple startups, one while in school at San Diego State University, proud Aztec, and then I sold that and went into another company that we built globally in what would be considered the action sports market. But it was in beach volleyball and volleyball. So we built a global brand, all 50 states, dozens of foreign countries. Sold that, and then more or less came the time of helping others build their own brands and companies based upon my background, and had some really good success with it. We still doing that, but it's very selective. The rest of it is a little bit more based on automation, and indeed building what is our, continuing to build on our Ion local network, which is thousands of local channels in North America and globally. And, again, in the meantime, multiple Ion ingredients, which I like to call them.
Yeah.
That's league activity, brand activity platforms, and certainly a very vibrant production and distribution company that's in the world of content creation and whatever else you want to call it, building shows, building just great content and supporting others in what they're doing. Because there's billions of, content creators
Oh,
these
man.
days.
Yes.
Everybody's a network.
Right.
But you're definitely a shining light, Dylan. I mean, I applaud you and what you've accomplished. And certainly I love the term leader.
Right. Oh, no, I
There you go.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it is incredible to see everything that you've accomplished. when I was doing my research, I could not believe the different diverse sectors that you've been a part of, and so that leads me to asking you, being that your work spans multiple industries from media to sports to consumer goods, how do you adapt branding strategies across such diverse sectors? Because it had to have been difficult. I mean, everything had to have had its challenges, right? But has it been difficult switching between diverse sectors?
The short answer is no.
Really?
The longer answer is it really takes, you got to take a look at what's happening in that marketplace and where you either fit in or going to disrupt
Mm,
because they're all interrelated. We're all humans, right?
yeah.
We all consume goods, let alone food, libation, and buy goods based on our affinities,
Yeah.
besides, let's just say, trying to change the world in terms of platforms and stuff. But it's all interrelated. I mean, there's no question that in our case as a network, we have a definite lean towards sports.
Hmm.
And so that relates to then the DNA and our personality in the world of sports and my background in developing sports brands and
Yeah.
sports properties. So there is continuous, as I would always advise you, you're continuously improving and doing your research as to what the market needs because you know how fast the market is changing
Changing.
and
Yes.
not even changing, it's just evolving at lightning
Right.
speed. And
Hmm.
and I know you want to talk about AI, but AI has been around for 20 plus years for
Hmm.
sure. And it's now coming into play as this conversation and this, use that's at the
Hmm.
consumer level, not just in a couple of the, let's call it search engines or
Yes.
other, platforms that use it. So, again, it's interesting, but you just, getting there is in dealing with the diversification of companies and things is just by keeping in play, keeping your eyes and ears open, listening,
Hmm.
besides just being creative
Right.
and having your good intentions take the lead.
Right. Well, I did want to dive into that a little bit deeper because you do see a lot of people who struggle with, authenticity in branding, right? I'm sure you've seen it many times. How do you help leaders develop a personal brand that truly reflects their values and strengths?
Well, first of all, your brand, everything starts with the brand, right?
Right.
So your brand, it's your personality, it's your company's personality and your own as a leader. And remembering that it's not necessarily just the founder, CEO, it's the
Right.
team.
Hmm.
And so it really leadership is critical in terms of the brand. So you want to take a look at and do an assessment and do a evaluation, whether it's at the very beginning when you're choosing your name, whether you're talking about it being, more or less a domain-based proposition, let alone a diversified business. And how does it speak? Does it speak to your good intentions and your morals, values? You want to have shared values with the entire ecosystem.
Right.
And then the authenticity side, it's like, well, are you selling it? Do you have to be too convincing? I mean, we could talk about things like funnels and to get people to convert into path. But at the end of the day, what is your message? What is your mission?
Hmm.
And that's super critical. That it has to relate to the end user, let alone if it's a business to business scenario, then how are you helping those companies succeed by your platform or product, et cetera?
Hmm.
So it's an interesting juggle, but to some some of it's second nature based on the industry you're in. And
Right.
that becomes the where it's supposed to be fun, right?
Hmm.
So
Right. No, you're absolutely right. And at least from the experience I've seen where people really struggle is the storytelling aspect. We talked about how we want to kind of touch on that, but I think that's where a lot of people make big mistakes, right? Is that they're trying to tell their story and sell their product, but they really just miss the mark. Do you see a lot of that
yeah,
happening?
yeah. So not every brand needs to have to have to let's say story tell to say who it is
It's
because
more
your your path can do that. I mean
right.
your workflow can do that without then thinking heavy lifting, gosh, I have to have and push out content every single day or week or whatever.
Right.
Even though it's nice to be able to say, hey, we're real, take a look inside what we're doing and or our history, let alone where we're going, especially if you have a great brand and a great personality, or you need to obviously do something with it
Hmm.
to have people become more familiar with it. But at the end of the day, it's all meant to be balanced because all of a sudden, when you're in the media business or you're doing, let's call it content and storytelling, in many ways, it's its own business model.
Yeah.
So, what business are you in and what business model are you tracking? And are you doing well at that? Because that is critical for your financial success.
Right.
Super critical,
Yes, no, yes, yes, you're right. I mean, you've worked with some of the biggest brands in sports and, health and tech
Yeah.
and like we talked about. And what are like a common trend or thread among the brands that truly stand the test of time, the ones that have just made it for the long haul? Is there something that's similar amongst all of them that they've done similar to help themselves stay, have that longevity?
I mean, I think part of it is just aligning with the right people.
Okay.
And it's the team, it's the human aspect, pushing AI aside for a moment, of
Mm-hmm.
course.
Yeah,
But it's a good team, and again, a brand methodology that's critical.
right.
Again, where are you going? This is about destinations. I mean, I love that ion word, of course, but
Right.
where are you going and when, and what are you doing in the meantime to get there? So that is two critical elements, and who are you going there with?
Mm.
Who's riding in your passenger seat with you?
Yeah.
Let alone you given the wheel to
Yes,
drive,
yeah. Right.
and then you grow up and you learn some of those things, and hopefully you grow up early,
Hmm.
relatively early, and have fun.
Right. I think you hit it right on the head. That's exactly where I see some of the businesses be more successful versus ones that who aren't as successful is they don't humanize, what they're selling and, reaching out to the right people. But when it's not humanized, and it's just like trying to sell you something that you can't relate to, it is, it really turns you off right away, right?
Yeah, I mean, the we can use even the word like personalization, but and community.
Yeah.
That's where you start become even more real. Doesn't mean you have to just be in that one, let's say one community, but it's by connecting with your audiences, obviously your accounts, your retailers, your end users and
Right.
consumer. But bringing the word community in is I think critical. That means local,
Yeah.
and then also things like events and stuff like that to now connect, at the ground floor and the
Hmm.
grassroots, being part of, the land, if
Hmm.
you will.
Right, right. No, that definitely makes a lot of sense. Dave, I did want to shift gears a little bit because, you've been a leader for a long time. You've been in charge of a lot of companies. And how do personal choices, whether in relationships, team building or personal development, impact leadership effectiveness and overall business success? And why do you think that this aspect of leadership is often overlooked in discussions about business growth?
Gosh, that's a great question, Dylan. I mean, I think the choices that you make, of course, some of this people either have heard and have experienced and stuff, and I could speak from personal experience too, but
Right.
the choices you make, even the choices with friends and the time you spend with friends and how you spend time with friends, let alone family, and then some of your personal relationships, whether it's a girlfriend, boyfriend, marriage, you have to have some level of shared values, and you want to have fun all the time. I mean, things should be seamless without a lot of effort and work,
Right.
so you get there. So if there's obstacles there, if you've heard the term, like oil and water
Hmm.
and things
Yeah.
like where people get along or they don't, etc. I know we can dive deep into
Right.
personal relationships and all that. But at the end of the day, you just got to make sure that you're making the right choices and doing the best to be aware of that as early as you can,
Mhm.
because I do see and I can say that there's a lot of time wasted on just because something may be fun. It doesn't mean, and from a business standpoint or from a wealth building standpoint, that you are properly aligned just because they're a great kisser or something, And I know
Right.
that that sounds kind of a little
Right.
obscure. I'm just giving reference to,
Yes.
including what is, your level of, socialness.
Hmm.
And do you need to be out all the time? And some of that has to relate to then your business succeeding, because that can be valuable time, whatever you're even consuming. And I would go as far as your relationship with even things like food,
Right.
but let alone drinking and stuff, to where that plays a role in what is your success path, whether, that is part of your business or part of your success. That's another story. And you would only know that other than trying to make the right choices of people. Because fast forward, it's like, where'd all that time go? Or gosh, I went off in this different direction that I didn't need to go in.
Yeah.
Or admit to yourself that maybe you've made some choices that need to be improved upon, and then you basically need to do something about it. So
Hmm.
I don't know if that's, a reasonable way to describe, what you were referring to, but yeah, it's all about good choices,
Right. Right. Yeah. How do you?
and planning the work and working the plan in personal life too,
Hmm.
without getting too rigid, because good things happen in the strangest ways, but at the same time, you know, just stay organized and stay, who is that right person, both in business and personal, to fit in my world, so we could succeed in a
Hmm.
personal relation or succeed in a business relationship, and filling the voids that you need versus hope they may have down the line, which
Hmm.
is that word potential. It's like, potential's cool. It's
Right.
just so.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. So also, regardless of what position you're in, you think that it's imperative to have that work-life balance, right? I mean, it's if you're no, if you don't have that, then you're not going to be successful in anything you do, right?
Yeah, I mean, Dylan, it's what's, I think, really important too. When you say work life, of course, the first thing you might think of is home and business,
Right.
as an example, or home and office, whatever.
Hmm.
So you have to be aligned with whoever you are living with, let alone whether it's a formal relationship or not, because they have to be supportive of you. They
Yeah.
they have to be a cheerleader, just like you want to be their cheerleader. If there's no cheering, then guess what? You're less likely to win.
Hmm.
And you
Yeah.
you want to win. You want to win together. And I am talking personal as well as business.
Right.
So it's in a continuous evaluation. The balance of it spills. I mean, think about all the folks that are even in home offices, which
Hmm.
I think is great. We have a ton of folks that are home office based, let alone in the office or
Yeah.
offices. But at the end of the day, it's, are we getting it done? Are we performing? And you also think about mental performance in your personal life as well, and then
Yes.
how that so-called balance could affect on both sides. Like, your personal and your home life could definitely affect your business life and how
Yes.
you're mentally going the approaches. And I can use the word, it's not my favorite iron word for sure, and that's depression.
Hmm.
But, you know, everyone gets that from time to time, or there's some that are deep in it, which it's sad. And of course, there's always trying to, have those things improve. But likewise, you don't want to self-inflict
Right. Yeah.
knowingly that, gosh, this is not the best situation for me.
Hmm.
And therefore make adjustments, pivot, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
So,
No,
and
I
keep it balanced, because you're in it together,
right. No, you're
work, team,
absolutely
and personal home life. Yeah.
right. You're absolutely right. I love speaking on this topic just because of the personal experiences I've had as well in the workplace, and it's so
Yeah.
easy to get lost in the work, right? And then you're
Yeah.
who suffers from that? Your family does, right? And I
Yeah.
think it's once you understand that it's not a 50-50 balance and it's never going to be, but it's just the give and take, to both, and understanding that you have to balance it in some way. But as long as you're giving
Yeah.
enough time to your family, enough time to work, but not too much to the other side, one side or the other, right?
Well, let's not forget, it's like, in a way, a side note, but we also think about where you are incorporating your family in not where they are
Yeah.
working for you or you working for them
Yeah.
in a business sense, but for them to even experience what your business life is about,
Yeah.
to hopefully say, hey, this is kind of cool. You're teaching them. There's an education process, which is not necessarily a classroom scenario.
Hmm.
This is us. This
Right.
is what fuels me and fuels our family in the highs and lows because, I mean, business, there's ups and downs, right? But at the same time, whether it's your offspring or your significant other, let alone siblings, et cetera. It's like, to be in touch and be sharing some of those experiences, let alone say, hey, come on by, let's have lunch and I'm going to show you around or something like that.
Yes.
I'm just talking out loud here on it, but I think that to have them experience it versus keep them away is where there's a little bit more, you know what? That was a little extra time they were able to spend with me
Hmm.
and or some kind of activation part of the business like an event, which I think is super cool if you could do that.
Yeah.
Um, and those are some very interesting. Then you go back to storytelling. It's like that's part of the story. It's part of your direction. So
Hmm. No, absolutely. I think that it's right back to what you said. Your family needs to be aligned with you with what you're doing in your business as well, because they're your biggest cheerleaders. They want to know what's going on. Why keep them in the dark? And you come home to complain about something, they have no idea what you're upset about, and they can
yeah,
talk
that's
through
right.
that with you, right? And you can talk
Yeah,
through it and have a good conversation to help you get through that. Because I mean, there's going to be tough times at work, and who do you want to go to talk about that? It'd be great to have your family to be able to sit there and talk to. And back to eating healthy and
yeah,
drinking and doing any of that stuff is a lot of people cope with that because they don't know how to communicate with their family, and so it's like that's a,
yeah.
a way better coping mechanism, with
Well,
having, communicate with them rather than having to resort to alcohol or anything like that, right?
yeah, for sure. I mean, I think also part of it is they may have some great inputs. Of course, it goes beyond just like money. They would be looking at, gosh, is this something that is a fit? I'm not talking about a fit in terms of the relationship fitting from are you in or you're out? It's
Right.
more like you're going down a path and maybe what you're doing and that process isn't really a fit. Grinding, in the office, let's call it. I know that in the last 10 years or something, that's obviously changed from a remote and technology standpoint, even further back. But the reality is like, well, how do you incorporate it? And it's like, okay, we have 24 hours a day. Who said that it has to be a proverbial 9 to 5 situation or something like
Right.
that, especially if you're spending time from with friends and or uh, your wife, your husband, your kids at whatever age they are. Um, and you know what? You may need to also spend a morning a week or spend, doing something else and just going into the grind unless you're working for someone else, which with all due respect, but there is that ability as long as you're performing,
Yes.
as long as you're doing your thing and delivering, whether again you're an entrepreneur or you're in a company or larger company. I mean, there you go. So when you're talking about balance, you do, I mean, there you go. So when you're talking about balance, you do have your choices and you get to shape your life. And what do you want your life to look like?
Right.
And for that matter, when?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
we have technology as our friend. Of course, we don't want to being, having the phones in our face when we should be having a conversation about
Hmm.
something that's human, something that's
Right.
important, and the ability to have that conversation is critical versus if you can't have a conversation, it's different when you're with your, like, let's say your kids, but
Yeah.
when you're with a significant other, it's like, yeah, you really should be able to be on the same page, be really rooting for each other, and believing in each other. And it's tough when you've got your distractions, stuff like that.
Hmm.
But at the same time, so but that's him because that's your partner in crime.
Right. Right.
That's
Exactly. Well, that's a
yeah.
very good point. Speaking about AI and it being our friend, that's a huge point
I
in
didn't say
today's day and
AI
age.
was our friend. I said technology is our friend.
Technology. Sorry, sorry, sorry.
AI is just this other,
Right. Yeah. But I
and
mean, with like, the advancements in technology, it's absolutely
yeah,
been a huge help and assistance in a lot of the stuff that we do in the day to day, right? And
yeah,
with everything I do, I know that it helps me be able to focus a lot more on my family because I've based it around helping me get some of the monotonous things out of the way. So I did want to
Yeah,
shift gears a little bit and talk about,
sure.
your friend AI and AI and digital transformation are, they're reshaping how brands engage with audiences, right? So how do you see AI influencing personal branding and digital marketing in the future?
Well, the question, let's say, that you're asking, Dylan, is it's not necessarily this time on, meaning, hey, today, how is AI going to change things? AI has already changed things, and it's helped businesses conquer people's minds and
Yeah.
mindset. And we could talk about who those companies are.
Hmm.
And for that matter, people who are not necessarily in the companies, but utilizing those companies' platforms, et cetera, effectively.
Right.
And so it's a choice. It's simply a choice on how you do incorporate AI, because otherwise it's going to incorporate you.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily want to say that in like a negative way,
No.
but
Yeah.
it's really bittersweet because that time is now.
Hmm.
And I can put on, let's say, my media hat, um, and talk about how things are projected, things are distributed, and routinely, AI is able to do that more
Yeah.
than ever and will dominate the human psyche, but it is humans that are behind
Right.
making that happen because the human can turn it on and off, so to
Mhm.
speak. And so, but at the same time, it's like, well, there could be value to it never being turned off because it's a useful tool depending on the tool that it's powering.
Yeah.
So as much as that may sound, what are you even talking about? The reality is that the AI is running so many things already and is being fed with the information to better run things.
Right.
And there is without a question the ability for it to have error.
Right.
So in like my case and in our case, I mean, our network is scaling like crazy, but at the same time, got to be super careful with it being overrun by the use of, let's call it AI,
Mhm.
to do those human things that are so important and not for them to be, I'm not going to say fake.
Yeah.
Um, and this isn't about like fake news or something. It's
No.
more about, am I having a community, interaction with a human or artificial intelligence?
Right.
And and when I may need a human, I may need that kind of attention. And then it's like, well, as long as you have the ability to, first of all, know the difference and how it's going to affect your life, business and personal, realizing that there is so much artificial intelligence that's been baked into humanity for decades, for
Yeah.
several
Right.
decades. So, and this is getting more and more prevalent and accepted and
Hmm.
talked about. And where now people, how it then relates is needing to incorporate to almost keep up with things, especially to what the capability is, as long as it's within reason,
Hmm.
because, you can let the whatever run wild, and guess what? You may not like the outcome.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that that's a big issue as well, is that like you touched on, is it's a human behind AI, right? They're still the ones driving it. But it's funny because there has to be some humanization there because if not, it's two robots talking to each other, emailing. Sometimes you'll get it to where they're just going back and forth. It's not even you if you have it set up that way. I'm getting emails
yeah,
daily on LinkedIn, that are just, you can tell it's very similar verbiage and it's like that's coming from ChatGPT, or whatever it is. And
right,
so I mean,
right.
you can tell you're not talking to that person, and I think that you lose customers that way. Wouldn't you say? I mean, you lose some of your network because they are just like, they're just having everything driven by robots and
Well,
AI compared to, it's actually somebody talking to me.
yeah, I think part of that, Dylan, is it's the acceptance.
Mm.
And I can use all sorts of keywords like acceptance about it, but the reality is what is it that you need it for? And are you okay with those messages for that, the emails, if you will,
Yeah.
that are automated, let's call it? let alone any kind of social platform that's
Correct.
has that as well. And it's
Yeah.
true.
Hmm.
Guess what? There's this thing called algorithms,
Yes,
there's
exactly.
this thing called, retargeting that's following you. You see that ad pop up whether you were talking about it before and it picked up there, or you clicked on something, oh, this guy likes this, or
Yeah.
whatever. So um it's like, I want to call it, years ago, it's like, well, you're accepting some level of um um privacy going away when you have opted into a email or to receive messages. You've given away your email, therefore that all of a sudden allows for there to be the database that's getting involved in your relationship with that company, that organization, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And some folks say that's worth it because now I'm in this community, where I'm in this,
Right.
I want to know about, so I want to be in this product pipeline or something like that. So
Hmm.
it's just, again, goes back to choices. As long as that the human and you're managing those choices,
Hmm.
in a way, you can say, well, let me just let AI manage that for me.
Yeah.
As long as you're managing what AI is doing
Managing.
for you,
Yes.
like,
Right. Yes.
whatever you want to call it, catch
Right.
22, or but you do need to put that on your action item list, as to how those things are truly incorporated in your world, because the ability for AI to run wild, but also to do the opposite for you positively,
Yeah.
it's all there. I think it's just a matter of deciding, and it goes down also how you're opting into things as well,
Right.
because
No.
that goes into a sea of blue,
Mhm.
of whatever you want to call it. It's, information that is then out there to then feed you. And then AI does have a role with that. So
Right. Right. No, you're absolutely right. It is definitely how you use it. I couldn't agree more. Well, Dave, I did
yeah.
want to shift gears
We,
one more time. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, well, I was just really going to say that in Ion sense,
Yeah.
that the goal is not to have AI control anything.
Mm.
It's to have some level of innocence
Yeah.
in a pretty crazy, noisy world,
Right.
which it's overruled by automation and technology and so forth. And not to say, well, there, that sounds archaic or something like that. That's not the case.
Right.
It's just, we have lives, and we should be able to take a step back, take a deep breath, and just decide how things do play a role in our lives, personally and business. And that's part of what is a success path and methodology.
Yeah.
And rather than just assuming something's going to happen from this automated process, or again, AI doing the work, including what is, I'm going to start mentioning platform names here because there's such a growing number of them, but where then people are just relying on those platforms, and like,
Yes.
you just don't know
Yeah.
if there is the integrity behind it. And of course, I love eye integrity, but you have to just make sure your integrity is checked, at the right spot.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. When you completely rely on it, it becomes a push button operation, right? And so it's like, how are you actually going to grow when you're continuing to rely on consistent, technology that's just doing everything for you? Then sometimes the creativity's out the door as well, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, quite frankly, Dylan, I mean, it could be the done right, your pathway to wealth,
Hmm.
and if that's what you're after, and that's fine.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of knowingly know, what it isn't, and what you're enabling, this
Yeah.
other entity, other thing to be doing for you,
Right.
and it
Yes.
could wreak havoc. It could also
Drive
create a good
growth.
havoc.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Nope, you're absolutely right.
So,
Well, Dave, thanks for
yeah,
touching on all that. That was amazing information, and I hope that gave the listeners some good insight on it as well. I did want to
yeah,
shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about
sure.
Ion. And, Ion Network operates across thousands of local channels. And so, how do you see the future of localized content and its impact on media and business?
Right. So seeing the future, again, the future is now.
Hmm.
So localized content, unless you're localizing something that's, let's call it national,
Yeah.
and you're just creating the localization thereof, the local content, uh, it's the foundation of our towns and communities and sports teams and youth leagues and community success. So it's always sort of existed one way or the other. Of course, we can look back to what is the newspaper and magazine and such, which many still exist. They may have their web version or whatever you want to call it. But it's then a matter of personal and local targeting that is in what is, I want to use the word conversion because I like that kind of much more of a business word, but
Right.
it's we've been consuming local content for years and years and years and years. It's now a matter of, well, do you need to localize your audience? Are you trying to create what is thousands of franchisees or licensees, or does your show, and like in your case, and I'm not going to speak for myself. I mean, you interview some great leaders,
Yeah.
but are they also leaders in their local community? Because God knows there are, depending on the size town,
Yeah.
hundreds, thousands, or dozens, or a few local leaders.
Hmm.
So what kind of impact do they have? And if you're talking about the impact in deciding, let alone the resources required perhaps to distribute that localized content. I mean, Ion has its own way and methodology to have um, let's call it a national, more general show scenario and localizing it and
Yeah.
making it very important to that specific community, let alone a specific demographic.
Hmm.
But it may not be what you need other than unless there's a digital path, which is very likely if you're ambitious,
Yeah.
to then reach back up to a national picture, let alone the local conversion path. So other than that, it's like you're making choices as, do I need this? Do I need to spend time with this? How important is it to my audience? And we're talking about like a business standpoint, let alone, and then you just go from there. And then it's
Hmm.
just part of your plan. And it's local, but local content is especially relevant when a national or global company needs to reach that local audience.
Hmm.
And your local community needs to still be in touch with those businesses, or for that matter, local content creator
Right.
who may not care about going viral nationally or something like that.
Hmm.
And it gets to be that local comedian. And we love supporting local talent and local shows. And even if they don't go into a growth mode, even though we're capable of achieving that.
Oh, wow. Do you have anything that you're excited about, events coming up that you want to mention to the listeners? I mean, I know we're talking about local on a national level, but I mean, are you doing anything in the on the smaller scale that you want to mention?
It's that's a good question. And it's interesting, like when you say smaller scale, because the definition of what is small now, right?
Right.
Because there's all sorts of ways to make something small grow.
Hmm.
But we're really proud. I'm really excited about the league decisions that we've made, of leagues that we have are being supportive of in sports, and some might consider them not sports, but what we do because they have to have some level of context because there's competition involved,
Yeah.
and how then they're viewed and the personalities of the athletes. And so, granted, we're just more or less. I know we're here in still, let's say winter,
Hmm.
and a lot of our activities are in the other seasons, being spring and summer and fall. But there's still the marketing year round. So physically upcoming would be things like, of all things, well, besides beach volleyball, but
Right.
pig racing and night fighting. And we're getting behind what is the National Pizza League in pizzerias around the country. And there's a lot of dynamics there that are exciting and part of, even you want to call it that local flavor.
Yeah.
And part of the because with the pizza stuff, but there's competitions like where you're buying your pizza and what the flavors and those the pizziolas, the owners and the pizza makers will tell you that.
Hmm.
Their sauce, their cheese, their dough is better than the next person or the family
Yeah.
recipe. So, and then even again, we're involved in all the premium sports or the NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB. It goes on down like golf, tennis, but we get a kick out of those events that are, have some level true localness besides macro cities.
Hmm.
So we do both, micro activity, a league that might be in just 5 states versus in all 50 states.
Hmm.
And then whoever thought that pigs, as an example, are athletes? Well, they are. They are trying to beat each other
Yeah.
down the course. And we have that in over 2 dozen cities,
Mm.
the PRL.
Right. Oh man.
So, and you know what? High viewership. It may
Yeah.
come in fragments, like, hey, why doesn't this one video or this one match, this one show have, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million viewers, where in aggregate, it's very significant.
Right.
And so that's it in of itself is a local and national platform.
Mm.
So we're excited. It's just rely on Ion, right? The
Right.
network.
Right. Yeah. It reminds me of like ESPN the Ocho, like the sports
Oh
that are
yeah.
like, yeah, like it's
Yeah.
the dodgeball, the ping pong, and stuff that's maybe not as popular, but it's still it's
Right.
not, those large events like you're talking about, those, I guess, larger scale we were talking about is not everybody's cup of tea. They like these events. And some people, even people who do enjoy those, also like these smaller events. I know I do. Sometimes I'll turn on the TV and see some events like that. And I'm like, this immediately intrigued me, it got my attention. And so it's amazing
Well,
that you're doing that.
let's say cornhole. I know, of
Yes.
course, cornhole, pickleball, you know, the most recent in the last 5+ years have
Yes,
become more prevalent. And it's not like we don't get involved in those too.
of
But
course.
the interesting thing is this, that those people, whether they're the audience, the fans, the spectators, and then the athletes themselves, they may not care about what might be the NFL or the
Yes.
NBA, and that's their thing. In fact, this is the way to express themselves or where they think they'll get the most physical benefit from, whether they have the skill or not for the other sports. And that's what makes the world go around.
Right.
I mean, so then if you're talking about events, local events, besides the fact that let's not forget there's youth sports in all of our
Yeah,
towns, right? And
exactly.
you start there, and or you move on and just be a spectator of some sort. But as long as you're having fun, you're staying healthy, you can keep a smile on your face and you can have a good life. It's like, what the heck? And
Right.
so at that point, more, um, I just get a kick out of some of these great sports. I mean, even it's interesting, and I try to keep this part, I guess, brief, but night fighting. I mean, we have established the KFL, the Night Fighting League,
Yeah.
and these folks, it's not just men, but there's women participating for sure as athletes, and they're competitive at it. And you know, there's the term like what some speak of it this way, like this is how we nerd out. This
Hmm.
is even their relation to computer games and stuff like that, which in many ways, oh, this is an introverted sport versus something that has, but there
Got
are
it.
some full-on studs in those sports. I mean, I think about arm wrestling. I mean, what
Yes.
we've done in the world of arm wrestling and where it's further scaling, there's been attempts and things and various entities and it's like we do definitely try to make sure that there's good business methodology so there's sustainability.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's like, well, that's their thing.
Yeah.
That's that's what makes them happy, where they're skilled at and can bring it. And how cool is that?
Yes.
I one of my 4 sports in high school, I was running, but it wasn't just running, it was sprinting,
Hmm.
not long distance, It was sprinting.
Yes.
And to this day, I sprint competitively
Really?
because, hey, this is what I'm capable of, you know?
Right. Yes.
So
Yeah.
there you
And,
go.
some say that sprinting is actually better for you on the knees than those long distance anyway. So that is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Training
I
like an
train in the
athlete.
soft sand,
Mm,
you know? I mean, so it's easier on the knees in the soft sand versus just
yes.
on the track, but you gotta have the track for sure if you're doing
Right.
it that way.
Yes. No, that sand training is no joke though. That volleyball, sand volleyball, all that stuff is just a different ball game. So you're right
Yeah.
about that. Well, Dave, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for speaking on all of this. I did want to ask you, how can listeners connect with you and learn more about Ion Network and Behar Brands?
Well, more or less, you can go to ions.com, just uh, four letters IONS. And here's a personal email address. It's just dave@ions.com. And you could start looking around socials. Most of our social stuff is with all the initiatives, the ION initiatives and the events and organizations that we do business with and we support, which is where you're going to find out a lot about us and them, which is good for everyone. But hit me up at dave@ions.com and ions and there we have it. There's the platform, and we have obviously many, many, many channels and things. But if you want to reach me, that's the personal route, and I'll be attentive.
Awesome. Yeah, perfect. Well, that is amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I'll make sure it's on the show notes as
Yeah,
well, make it a little bit easier on the listeners and if they want to reach
yeah,
out, I definitely advise anyone listening to do that. So thank you. I
my
do
pleasure.
have one more question before we go, just for the
Question's a
entrepreneurs.
great iron word, Dylan.
Yeah, yeah, it
The
is.
word question, it's a great three-letter word at the end.
Yep. You're right.
Go for it.
Yeah. So what advice would you give to entrepreneurs trying to differentiate themselves in an oversaturated market?
Well, one thing is if you're going into a saturated market, you better have differentiation. So there's a saturation and differentiation. So you've got to have differentiation. And then the word disruption does come to mind.
Mm,
So what are you disrupting and even why? If not, if you're after just, 1% of the market share, where's a place in an industry or value proposition where you can have a leading market share? So it goes back to the choice thing, right?
mhm,
So crowded marketplace, there's always open for great minds and brilliant minds to execute. To some extent, might take true financial resources,
right.
but there's plenty of ways to help you get there aside from simply cash. Um, so it's what void are you trying to fill, and what market are you trying to disrupt? And then is it something, if that's in your view of eventually wanting to exit, um, then who's even what does that destination look like? And what companies even want what you might be doing? So I know that may be a lot of like words, but the reality is that you don't want to waste your time on something that's already truly being served and you're going to be fighting your way to even make any level of money.
Mhm,
So you got to think, what is the financial driver? And certainly for your own personal passion to execute on something you really can have fun with, you can build a team, whether it be small or large, to execute. But again, you want to make sure and then you have the methodology to carry it all out.
mhm. No, that's absolutely true. Because I think that's obviously a lot of where people, when they first start their businesses and they're like, man, I can do this better than this person, but then they go in and basically do the exact same thing and wondering why it's not as successful. And, it's that differentiation and, there's saturated markets, but you have to differentiate yourself and disrupt it, like you said, right?
Yeah. I mean, again, it's you've got to have a point of evaluation and for that matter, the valuation side of things. But and that's where it comes to pivoting. So we have, an educational part of the business, nonprofit, Student Entrepreneur Academy. And there's a point that you've got your business, you're working on the business, the planning, you're doing your research, and that comes down to a competitive matrix of who's even in the business or is a threat there. And then you have the opportunity to pivot
Hmm.
to something either entirely different or, hey, make a couple of adjustments and you're doing it. Now, the word channel is important because what channel are you market channel are you trying to reach? And it could be the channel's underserved, but the overall market is not underserved. But gosh, just hitting this particular market could be a great business.
Hmm.
You have to be open to that because it might be simply where you need to start, but where you'll make your biggest impact
Right.
and making it worth your time. So
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you so
thanks,
much,
bud.
Dave. That was a great answer. Thank you so much again for, spending time with me, with the listeners, and sharing your, eye intelligence and your expertise. It's been amazing.
My pleasure. Of
Yes.
course, Dylan, you're awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
anytime.